Let's talk about the takeover. What's up, guys? It's your boy Mr. Dean, Denny Aubrey, Brawlers Avenue, and we're going to talk about the top 10 things that I feel needs to be improved about the takeover. Now, I was going to do a review prior to this about the game, but I decided to hold off on that because it's still in early access, and I feel like there's going to be things that they're going to improve over time before they do the release of the game on Switch and Steam. So I'm going to go over 10 things that I feel needs to be refined as far as making the game run a lot smoother and play a lot better, and as well as make it its own unique experience. So, number 1, combo system. Now, the thing that I think is holding this game back the most is that it's not taking advantage of the fact that it has 2 attack buttons, special moves, and gun mechanics. Now, the combo system, I believe, needs a lot of work because it is trying to do what Streets of Rage has done, but with 2 buttons. Now, the biggest thing about Streets of Rage and what made Streets of Rage this awesome thing and this, capturing the lightning in a bottle kind of experience is that they worked around the limitations of the fact that they only had 1 attack button to use. There was only 3 buttons on the Sega Genesis controller. They wanted to have special moves, attacks, and jump. Of course, later down the line, they had 6 buttons as well. Now, the Takeover does not have this issue. Now, the thing about the combos is that they have the potential to flow into things that the mechanics are not doing at the moment. What I would actually do in response to this is to, for one, let's get rid of the vaulting system because honestly it is completely and utterly useless when you have 2 attack buttons. There's a lot of grapple options you can do with just the attack buttons alone. Vaulting is not needed. It feels like it's just there to say, hey, we played Streets of Rage, and honestly it doesn't need to be there. Instead, what you want to do, and this would improve the combo system as well, is add the grab cancels from games like Final Fight. You can do it in 2 different ways. You can have down an attack after 3 attacks or 3 or 4 attacks or whatever to end a combo with a throw or upper attack or whatever. Or since you have 2 attack buttons, you can use punch and kick together during a combo to cancel into a grab and into a throw and stuff like that. Now, this would fix the issue of, for one, not having a way to knock away enemies behind you that are coming up behind you and stuff, because that is another thing that the Takeover is missing. This is one of the things that I think the Takeover probably should have tried to be inspired by, is adding the back attack. Now, since it doesn't have a back attack, I would actually suggest just a quicker and simpler fix is to, like I said, add grab combos. Add grab cancels into the game. Allow the player to throw enemies mid combo. That way, I can knock away enemies that are behind me, continue fighting enemies that are in front of me as well. And I don't have to stop the action to do that. I don't have to turn around mid combo to try to hit these enemies that are surrounding me and stuff like that. It's a good way to add another dynamic to the combo system and utilize both attack buttons more, and not have this convoluted vaulting system that doesn't really work with the rest of the mechanics. It will also improve on the grappling, which will be the next point that I will jump into. Point number 2, the grappling system. The Takeover does not need vaulting. Okay, like I said, you have 2 attack buttons, which you can do since both attack buttons don't really do anything regardless if you hold forward or not. It still does the same attack. So Ethan, for example, he does a headbutt when you press punch, and then he does a knee flurry when you press kick. Okay, so when you press back with either of those, he throws backwards. So now add the ability to throw forward with punches and kicks. Or you can do, you can add a lot. Actually, you can add a lot more, really. You can add, you got 2 attack buttons, you can add so much with that. But to keep it simple, have holding forward and pressing any attack button throw forward. That would That would change the dynamic so much, and you don't need vaulting anymore. Now, the reason I'm so against vaulting outside of that is because the moves that these characters do when they do from the back grab from vaulting doesn't really do much. You know, it doesn't really help. You'd be better off just having them throw the enemy and throw enemy forward. You know, honestly. And then another reason as well, and this is the other thing that they kind of missed that I've noticed, because either enemies move too fast, they either turn around too fast, there's not enough cross up, or this mechanic simply just isn't there. But you can't grab enemies from behind. And that was the whole thing about Streets of Rage, is that you can grab enemies from front or behind. So there was two different grapples entirely. So vaulting was there to bring those two things together as well. That was another reason why vaulting is in there. The Takeover doesn't have this, and the Takeover doesn't need this either. It doesn't need it. Point number 3. The gun system. It's between AVP and Punisher. If I were to recommend something the most, I would take pages from the Punisher. As far as gun mechanics go, if you're going to keep the aiming system, at least let us walk while we're aiming. You know, otherwise, just get rid of the aiming system altogether and just let the buttons shoot. Just let it just shoot. To balance this out, if you're going to go that route, Ethan, for example, he can shoot multiple times. Like I said, just have a reload system where the characters have to have their mandatory reload animation. Get rid of the ammo items. They're just annoying. Honestly, that ammo system is just really annoying to deal with. It does nothing for the system, honestly. Just have an automatic reload mechanic that leaves the character vulnerable when they have to reload. Ethan can shoot multiple shots. Have him be able to shoot shots until it runs out of ammo. Megan has a bit more of a startup, but her gunshot would knock enemies down, so she has less shots before she has to reload and a little bit of a startup before she can shoot. Hers aims right before shooting, but it's not as slow as Connor's, obviously. That would balance her system out, because I can tell you right now, Megan's gun is very abusable against bosses. Okay, that's why I'm saying you guys need to nerf that. I don't really use Connor's gun, honestly. I really don't. But my suggestion, if you're going to go with that system of removing the aim and going with the Punisher system, I would make it where Connor can only shoot twice before he has to aim, or not to aim. Shoot twice before he reloads, and give him a long startup. Like he already has a long startup. So I mean, you guys already pretty much got that taken care of. But make his gunshots do a lot more damage up close. Like, just do a lot of damage up close, and then from far away, it doesn't do as much damage, but it spreads more ground, like more Z-axis. That would make his gun, powerful. He only has 2 shots at a time before he has to reload. His reload is probably the slowest animation and stuff. That would balance that out. But that's my suggestion as far as the gun mechanic goes. Point number 4. The special moves. Alright, so we're getting into the special moves now. Specials need to cancel out of everything, and the biggest problem with specials right now is that they cannot cancel mid-combo animation, and that is needed. That is definitely needed, because again, these things are here to get you out of a pinch. And when you're playing on hard, a lot of these enemies will aggress on you, and they will be behind you waiting for you to pull off that one move in every character's combo that has multiple attacks in one animation. They're waiting for you to do it, and Ethan's biggest issue is that a lot of his combo windows launch him in the air and stuff like that too, and a lot of times I just want to cancel out of that before it happens. So biggest points for special, probably the shortest point in this 10-point essay or whatever. Make specials cancel out of everything, even mid animations of these attacks, and separate the super button from the special button. There's not much I can really say about the alternate specials. Maybe if I can cancel my combos into those specials like immediately, they would have more use. But right now, the only use that I have out of the special moves are the defensive special. The offensive specials don't. I mean, like I said, Ethan's fireball, Megan's multiple kicks, and whatever the hell Connor does. I don't even, like I said, I don't even know what Connor does. Those alternate specials aren't very useful right now. Point number 5, the super moves. Separate the input. Either separate the input or make it where you can only do the super move when you're in rage mode. Like, the biggest problem is that the rage mode and the super move are overlapping in mechanics because they're both desperation mechanics. So the best way to fix this is to make it where you can only do super moves during rage mode. But I mean, that pretty much means removing one of the bars, because I mean, what point is the super move bar if you can only do it during rage attack? But if that's not the case, I would say to just make it a separate input. You have attack plus jump still open, which is the standard special move input. So I guess for super moves, if you're going to keep it the way you have it, at least give it a different input where you can do it separately from special moves, because it's very, very distracting for one. And the fact that I don't want to do a super move, or a lot of times I'm either trying to save the super move for when I have low health, or I'm just trying to avoid it because I don't want to end up in a situation where the super move is distracting me from the action and I end up getting hit before an enemy actually gets hit by the super move, which happens a lot, especially on hard mode. And that's another thing, because the super and the specials are tied together. When you're low on health, you can't do the super moves anymore. Now, this is probably just an oversight. It's probably something that you just completely missed. I don't think anybody mentioned it on the Steam boards, but I'm mentioning it now. You cannot do your super move when you're low on health, because you can't do your special move when you're low on health. And since they're tied together, you can't do your super move. And that's the biggest problem with the super move right now, is that you can't do it when you desperately need to do it. It's a screen clearing move. Most of the time, people are not going to use it unless they're low on health. So it needs a separate input. If it's not going to be refined in any other way, just give it a separate input. But my personal suggestion is to make it an attack that you can do in rage mode, and at that point it replaces the special move. So if you're going to keep it as something that overlaps the special move, then make it a special move that only works when you're in rage mode. That way it's not distracting. It's not something somebody accidentally does when they're trying to get out of a pinch or anything like that. It just needs to be moved somewhere. Point number 6, the rage meter. Alright, so I try not to overlap my points, but something needs to happen when it comes down to the super and the rage mode. So rage mode needs to be shorter. Add invincibility instead of having the characters block attacks, because then there's not this issue of being knocked out of the air from your combo during rage mode. Now another thing, like I said, I was suggesting this with these super moves, is to have the super move only be done when you're doing a rage attack. So like I said, instead of replacing special normally, just have 1 meter, just 1 meter rage mode. That's it. Rage mode and super mode are built the same way. There's no reason to have 2 meters, honestly. If I would combine the two, just make the rage mode, because the rage mode is a lot more unique than the super move. Honestly, it's a unique mechanic is a great thing to have in a takeover. I do like it. It just needs to be refined. I think it needs to be shorter, and I think it needs to be combined with the super move. So what I would do is make a Power Stone system. Make the Rage mode a mode where you have more powerful attacks, and then you have a super move. This super move gets rid of Rage mode immediately. After it's done, Rage mode is gone. Okay, so make Rage mode shorter and make Rage mode completely gone after doing a super move. So in this case, you don't have to change the input for the super move, just replace special. That way, you know, there is no, there's no abusing of special moves during Rage mode, which is another thing that can be easily abused in Rage mode. All you have is a super move. So if you use that super move, your Rage mode is gone. So you have to choose between using your attacks or using a super move. There's no specials in Rage mode. That to me is the best way to incorporate Rage mode, keep the super moves and whatever, and get rid of the clutter. You know, because the super move, I mean, the super meter is just not needed, honestly. It isn't. So I would do it where the combo, you know, having a successful long combo builds on the Rage mode. This encourages the player to be a lot more on the offensive, as well as learning how to time their combos and, you know, separating their attacks between enemies and stuff like that. It helps them do that. Another suggestion that I make as well is to have it where, now this may not, people may not agree with me on this one, but instead of having enemies attacks take away your Rage meter, have it where, you know, if the player is not comboing enough, the Rage meter just drains by itself. Like once it fills, it's filled. Like keep that in the system, but until it fills up, you have to complete your combos. You got to keep doing your combos to build up the meter. Otherwise, it's just going to drain and go right back to zero again. Point number 7, the enemy AI and enemy pacing. I don't know where to start with this, because the biggest issue to me is that a lot of enemies, there's not enough introduction of enemies between stages. There's just, it feels like in one instance I'm being introduced to a lot of enemies, in the next instance it's just the same enemies all over again. I would look to Streets of Rage 2 as far as like an example for this. Streets of Rage 2 pretty much all the way up to stage 6. All the way up to stage 6 you're being introduced to new enemies. What I would suggest is, for one, keep the gun enemies at the boss, at the first stage. Take them out of the bar. You know, give us like for the first stage, you know, for example, like this, I think you guys could get where I'm coming from here. The first scene, you know, no Axe Lady, just leave her out. You know, leave her for the bar. You know, have her introduced in at the end of the bar and stuff. You know, in the Electra type of deal. If you're gonna introduce her, we have our not Donovan, our not Gaussy, and we have our not Signal. That's enough for the first scene. Just have a bunch of them. First scene, you know, like I said, you know, like the stage is pretty much based on Streets of Rage 2 anyway. So, you know, there's no shame in, you know, taking a little bit from them in that regard. You know, just have the first trio of enemies there. Then you introduce the Axe Lady. And then for the boss fight, that's when you introduce the gunmen, because they're along with the guy with the flamethrower and stuff like that. Second stage is quite a mess, honestly. The knife guys, like, you guys got to save that guy for like later on the stage, because he shows up at the beginning and he's just swinging at you, and you know, the guy's cheap. You know, he's cheap, and I don't want to take away from that, but I do think that he needs to be saved for later down the line in the stage. Now this is where you start bringing more of your Axe Ladies. Okay, instead of the knife guys, bring in the Axe Ladies and the gunmen and stuff like that. You know, spread them out. You know, have for every trio you have maybe one gunman or one axle lady or something like that. You get rid of the kickboxers. The kickboxers, you guys gotta save the kickboxers for later. You know, these guys, kickboxers are always the very menacing type of enemies. You know, you want to save them for later. Save them with the bat ladies. Because if I remember correctly, stage 3 is the car stage, if I remember correctly, and then you go on stage 4, which is the docks. So that would be the perfect place to introduce the kickboxers. Have them along with the ladies with the bats and stuff like that. Get rid of the commandos and stuff in that stage. You know, save them for later. I would just keep the regular gunman with the what's his name? I can't remember the second stage boss. Him and his rifles and stuff like that. I would keep the regular gunman with him. If you're going to introduce any of the soldiers or whatever at that point, I mean, I personally wouldn't. I would just save them for later. I would introduce the lady gunmen instead, because they're a lot less. They have a lot less moves than the guys with the rifles and stuff like that. That would be my suggestion for the first 2 stages, is to just tone it down with all the enemy introductions. And like I said, you know, the docks is where you would introduce the you can save the sailor for the ship. You know, that's fine. That works. You know, that works fine to me, honestly. But I mean, if you're going to, well, actually, no, I think the sailors are actually on the dock, so that works fine too. The sailors, the ladies with the bats, and then that's where you introduce the kickboxers, is the docks. Or you can wait even later. Don't introduce the kickboxers until the ship or the island. Wait until the island to introduce them. But yeah, that's pretty much it as far as the enemy placement in the stage pacing. I think that would help with the pacing a lot for the stages. Just doing that with the enemy placement. You introduce enemies practically every stage up to the point of where you get to the beach stage. Now, you guys don't have any ninjas. I'm not suggesting you guys throw any ninjas in there, but I mean, if you guys want to add some more enemies, you know, you can add a ninja in there somewhere. Point number 8, the enemy AI. Okay, so now this is the bigger issue with the enemies, is the AI. Okay, so the biggest problem with the AI is that the enemies are just doing the same. They have different attack animations, but their attacks are essentially the same thing. They either have a combo that's knocking you down, or they have one attack that's knocking you down. Now, what you guys really should take advantage of, I would do with the standard enemies, don't give them a combo that knocks down. Give them an infinite jab. Don't underestimate what a character with a jab that never knocks you down does, because that really helps a lot of the other enemies. Like, that makes them very dangerous. On higher difficulty levels, like playing Streets of Rage 2, those enemies are the worst. They're the worst. The guys that knock you down, they're your best friend. They gave you a moment of invincibility. They gave you a moment to regroup your thoughts for a second as you get up. They gave you that peace of mind. That guy with the infinite jab that just keeps jabbing you and circling around you, that guy's an asshole. Give that guy a chance. So yeah, don't underestimate, you know, what a guy without a knockdown does to beat him up, because they add a lot. They add a lot to the system. So yeah, just give some different stuff for us to avoid. You know, somebody needs a slide. Somebody needs a jump attack. You know, we have rolling mechanics. See, that's the thing. I forgot about the rolling mechanic, guys. I forgot about it. Because there's not a lot of reason for me to roll. You know, outside of the gunmen and the bosses doing their breakout attacks, I don't have much of a reason to roll. If you got somebody sliding and jumping at me, I have to roll, or I have to jump over them. I have to do something. So, you know, give some kind of variety of what type of attacks these guys are doing. Don't just give them combos. Don't just give them knockdown attacks. Give them, you know, some stuff that you know, makes us have to think about how we approach them. Because right now, and that's another thing, none of these enemies grab you either. Nobody grabs you in this game. Give us a grab, like the kickboxers, for example. They could be grabbing you. Like I said, if you guys gonna take influence from Streets of Rage, take influence from the stuff that they did that a lot of beat 'em ups don't do. Because that's the stuff you really need to take influence from. Like I said, enemies need to grab. Somebody needs to slide. Somebody needs a jump attack. Right now, most enemies do the same thing. They just have different attack animations, and that's, to me, that needs to change. As far as the AI, the rest of the AI goes, I notice enemies circle around you a lot. That's good. Biggest problem though is that they try to anticipate you moving to them too much. Like I said, they don't have to be super smart, but make sure that they're actually trying to punch you, not just punch in the air. A lot of them punch the air. The axe ladies, they do their wake up attack even if you're not anywhere near them. That needs to be fixed. If you're near them, that's when they should be doing their wake up attack, if they even have one. But they do it all the time. That's the big problem, and it leaves them open. So that's just my suggestion. I didn't want to delve into too much into that. I feel like the devs are actually probably working on that anyway. Point number 9, the bonus stages. Okay, let's wrap for a minute. Bonus stages, I get the point behind them, but you have to be careful when you're implementing it, because the whole thing about beat 'em ups is that the combat is the most important thing that's supposed to keep you going. These little breaks from the game are great to have, but they can't be too distracting, and right now the bonus stages are way too distracting. Biggest problem right now is that they're not bonus stages. They're stages where you can fail and you have to continue, and that is a big problem. That is a huge problem for a type of thing that takes you away from the standard combat. You want those things to be short and sweet and rewards the player if they do things the right way. You don't want to punish the player with these type of levels. I wasn't a big fan of the jet stage, but now that you guys actually had an explanation behind it, like actual cutscene and stuff like that, I think it's actually pretty cool. I love the driving stage, but I think that the driving stage needs, I think both of them need to be revamped pretty well. The driving stage, for one, it is very hard to see what I'm doing a lot of the time. There's a lot of stuff going on. I would make it, instead of the civilian cars taking away from time, or it can take from time. Maybe make it where, if the timer runs out, that just ends the stage, and then you just go to the next stage. You don't rack up as many points as you did before. If you guys are gonna do something like that. So if you're gonna keep it like that, then just make it where when the time runs out, then the stage ends there, and you don't rack up as many points. Maybe you don't get as many bonuses. Maybe you get a bonus life for finishing the full stage. Something to that degree, but don't punish a player by making them have to restart the stage, because it hurts the game. It hurts the game's progression. It hurts the game's pacing. It gets in the way of everything. Same thing with the jet stage. Just make it where, if the player plays it right, it rewards them with a longer stage, or not so much a longer stage, but more points, more point opportunities, stuff like that. And we come down to my final point: the lives and continue system. Okay, so this is probably the toughest thing to talk on, because it's one of those things where lives and continues are kind of archaic, but there's not really much I can suggest to replace them, as far as beat 'em ups go. I don't like the fact that you have to start the entire scene over, mostly because a lot of these scenes are very long. So it's just a big issue. if you're gonna have a continue system, I would just make it where you start exactly where you're at. You know, don't make it cut to a different continue screen. Or if you're going to do that, you gotta make the scenes shorter or something. Like you gotta cut these scenes into different. Like something has to happen where it just doesn't drag the game out so long having to do a continue, because it really makes the game drag, and it makes it drag really bad. The biggest problem with the continue system right now, though, is that when you continue, you don't start with the same ammo. There's just a lot of issues that happens when you continue. Now, there's the whole thing with the sound, the garbling sounds and stuff with the stuff. I'm not going to get into that because somebody already talked about that on Steam. But I would suggest making the continue, like, just continue exactly where you died at instead of having them start the scene over. Or if you're gonna continue with having them start the scene over, just make the scene shorter, because there's just times where you get in a situation you just lose lives left and right because of stuff like you know. And I don't know, maybe it won't be as bad when things are updated and fixed, and we're not dealing with a lot of these issues that we're dealing with when it comes down to mechanics and the balance with the difficulty and stuff like that. We won't be dealing with stuff, so the continues may not be as bad. Like I said, it's just hard to really pinpoint what to do when it comes down to that system, because it's very different between games. Fight and Rage, for example, makes you start the scene over, but the scenes are very short and quick. Like you get through the scenes pretty damn quickly. Like if you can survive all the way through the scenes, you'll get through them pretty fast. Unfortunately, the Takeover is not like that. You don't get through these scenes very quickly a lot of times, you know, especially stage 2. You start off with stage 2. Stage 2's first scene is very long. It's a very long scene. So, and I feel like that's actually, ironically enough, that's where most of my continues are, is stage 2. A lot of the other stages go by, you know, they go by relatively quick, you know. But usually by that point I've gotten into the flow of things and stuff like that too, so I'm not really dealing with a lot of that stuff. That's another issue with the pacing and stuff, is that stages like stage 2 or whatever, those need to be the shorter stages, because that's when people are like trying to get a handle of everything. So at least when they continue have to start the scene over, it's not as bad. But something has to happen with the continues and the lives and stuff like that. There's not a lot of life ups. There really isn't. There's probably one. I've seen probably 1 or 2 life up items. You guys have if I remember correctly, it is a point system. So, you know, add some extra lives to the point system. That's the only thing I could really suggest there, to kind of keep the longevity of, like, you know, staying on one continue kind of thing going on. I managed to 1 credit this game on normal once, and that was about it. And I don't very often, if I am continuing, it's not because of like I'm having a difficult time getting a hold of the mechanics or anything. It usually just ends up being dumb stuff like, oh, the axe lady just so managed to rail on me at the right time when I only had 1 life left, and now I'm continuing. You know, it's not even a thing of like I got wore down or anything. It's just, you know, I have a death here and there that was kind of dumb, and because there's no life ups or anything like that, you know, I just ended up continuing at the wrong time, and the next thing you know, I'm having this really long run. So I think that's why this is my last point as opposed to the earlier points, because it's not as important to me. I feel like if everything else that I pointed out was fixed, this system wouldn't really be much of an issue. You know, it only hurts the pacing because there's a lot of stuff that causes you to lose lives very easily, and when you don't have much of a life up system going on here, you don't have points that give you life up, or even, like I said, the bonus stages, for example, could give you some bonus lives or something, anything like that. Like, if anything, if you don't want to add any like life up items or whatever, at least have the bonus stages give you some life ups, or something to kind of keep you going in between, a lot of stuff. It gives the player more incentive. Like, if I'm low on lives, then that means I want to continue. I actually want to do good on this bonus stage. It ties in together. But hopefully, that helps. I didn't want to have to type all this out on Steam and not really have my thoughts together. I think a video would be a lot more helpful in that regard, and at least you guys can get the tone that I'm talking about. I'm not trying to shit on the game or any of that stuff. Usually, if I hate a game or whatever, you guys aren't going to really hear me talk about a game. Like, if I see a game that has potential, yes, I'm going to rag on it. I'm going to be like, look, there's something about this needs to change. I'm gonna throw in suggestions that I think would improve the game, stuff like that. Like, I will talk about it a lot more. I'm done rambling. That's it. Thank you guys for watching the video. I will catch you later. Peace.